Ethan Walker's entire business empire depended on tonight. The 32-year-old CEO paced his Manhattan penthouse, watching city lights blur through floor-to-ceiling windows. His grandmother's 80th birthday celebration was in 3 hours, and his supposed fiancée had just texted him from Paris, abandoning their arrangement for a modeling contract. "Damn it, Olivia," he muttered, crushing the phone in his grip. Without a partner tonight, his family would resume relentless matchmaking efforts, and the board members attending would question his stability. Everything he had worked for since taking over Walker Industries at 28 hung in the balance. A soft knock interrupted his panic. Grace Miller entered with tea, her brown hair pulled back simply, wearing the same modest uniform she had worn for 6 months as his temporary housekeeper. "Your tea, Mr. Walker," she said quietly, setting the tray down carefully. Grace had always been different from a revolving door staff. At 26, she possessed a gentleness that calmed even his most stressful days. She never asked for raises, never gossiped, and somehow always knew exactly what he needed before he asked. "Grace, wait." The words tumbled out. "I need your help with something unusual." She turned, her green eyes curious but patient. "Of course, sir. I need you to pretend to be my fiancée tonight, just for a few hours. My grandmother is having her birthday party, and I promised to bring someone special." Grace's teacup slipped slightly in her hands, but she caught it gracefully. "I do not think that would be appropriate, Mr. Walker. Please, I will pay you $10,000 for one evening." The silence stretched. Grace set down the cup and studied his face. Behind his confident exterior, she saw something vulnerable, almost desperate. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Because you are real, Grace. You are kind and genuine, and my grandmother will see that immediately." After a long moment, she nodded. "I will help you." 2 hours later, Grace descended the grand staircase in a midnight blue gown Ethan had procured. Her transformation was stunning, but what struck him most was how she carried herself with the same quiet dignity she always possessed. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you," she replied, cheeks flushing pink. The Walker family estate in the Hamptons buzzed with activity. Margaret Walker, Ethan's grandmother, sat regally in her favorite armchair, her sharp blue eyes missing nothing. "Grandmother, I would like you to meet Grace Miller, my fiancée," Ethan announced, his hand finding the small of Grace's back protectively. Margaret studied Grace for a long moment, then smiled warmly. "Come here, dear. Let me look at you properly." Grace approached without hesitation, taking the elderly woman's hands gently. "It is such an honor to meet you, Mrs. Walker. Ethan speaks of you constantly." "Does he now?" Margaret's eyes twinkled. "Tell me, what do you love most about my grandson?" Ethan tensed, but Grace answered without missing a beat. "His kindness to people when he thinks nobody is watching. He leaves coffee and pastry for security guards every morning and calls employees on their birthdays." Margaret's eyebrows rose in surprise. Even Ethan looked stunned. "And what does he love about you?" Margaret pressed. Grace glanced at Ethan, then his grandmother. "I think he appreciates that I see him as Ethan, not just Mr. Walker." As the evening progressed, Grace moved through the party with natural grace. She listened intently to Margaret's stories, asked thoughtful questions about Ethan's childhood, and remembered every name and detail shared. "She is remarkable," whispered Clara, the head housekeeper. "Look how she speaks with everyone equally, from the governor to the catering staff." Ethan watched Grace throughout the night, seeing her through new eyes. When she excused herself to help an elderly guest, complimented musicians personally, and spent 20 minutes listening to his awkward cousin's stamp collection stories, he realized something had shifted inside him. But as the evening wound down, Grace suddenly gripped the back of a chair, her face pale. Ethan was at her side in seconds. "Grace, what is wrong?" "Nothing, just tired," she whispered, hand pressed against her chest. Margaret watched with knowing eyes. Later, she pulled Ethan aside. "That girl has a heart condition," she said simply. "What? How do you know?" "I have had enough heart troubles to recognize the signs. The way she paces herself, how she controls her breathing. She cares for herself carefully, but more for others." The revelation hit Ethan like a blow. Grace had never mentioned being sick, never asked for special consideration. She had simply done her job with quiet strength, even while managing her own health challenges. The next morning, Ethan found Grace in the kitchen, preparing his usual breakfast as if nothing had changed. "Grace, we need to talk." She looked up, guard rising. "About last night? You do not need to worry, Mr. Walker. It was just business." "Stop calling me that," he said gently. "And it was not just business. Not for me." Grace's hand stilled on the mug. "Ethan, last night was wonderful, but I am not the kind of woman who fits into your world permanently." "Why? Because you work for me? Because you are not for money? Because I am sick," she said quietly, words hanging in the air. "I have a heart condition. I may never give you the normal life you deserve." Ethan stepped closer. "Grace, remember what you told my grandmother last night? About how you see me as Ethan, not Mr. Walker?" She nodded, tears threatening. "Well, I see you as Grace. Not your illness, not your job title. Just you. And that person has given me more happiness in one evening than years." Margaret appeared, leaning on her cane with a satisfied smile. "Love is not about perfection. It is about finding someone whose imperfections complement your own." Grace looked between them, walls crumbling. "I do not want to be anyone's burden." "You could never be a burden," Ethan said, taking her hands. "You have taken care of everyone while quietly managing your own challenges. That is not weakness, Grace. That is extraordinary strength." 3 months later, Grace stood in the same ballroom where their love story began, wearing a different gown but the same gentle smile. The engagement ring on her finger was real, and so was the love in Ethan's eyes as he held her close. Margaret watched from her chair, heart full. Sometimes the best love stories are not about finding someone perfect, but someone perfect for you. And sometimes the greatest courage is not conquering the world, but opening your heart to let someone else conquer you instead.